The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Wednesday, March 16th, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,262.13 an ounce, silver $15.59 an ounce, Texas crude $36.34 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 415 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 597 BC, Babylonians captured Jerusalem. King Nebuchadnezzar replaces Jehoiakim with Zedekiah as the new king of Israel. Jeremiah recorded this event in chapter 37, verse 1 of his book. Quote, and King Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, reigned for Jehoiakim, the son of Jehoiakim, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, made king in the land of Judah. The beginning of the Babylonian captivity of Israel. Today in history. In recent news, police released reports and documents from an investigation of Jason Brian Delton, an Uber driver charged with killing 6 people and injuring 2 others in a shooting spree in Kalamazoo, Michigan, earlier this week, where Delton apparently told detectives that the Uber app he used for his routes controlled him like a puppet. An Uber spokesperson said in a statement on Wednesday that it's hard to know how to respond to someone who refuses to take responsibility for his own actions. Our hearts go out to the victims' families who have to live with the consequences of his terrible crimes. Aside from the sick, depraved attitude he has clearly shown towards other human beings, this Jason Delton is delusional enough to even go as far as to file for $10 million in punitive damages for emotional stress caused by the employee-employer relationship between him and Uber. The only thing more despicable than this would be a justice system which actually sides in his favor. The hacktivist group Anonymous has declared total war on GOP frontrunner Donald Trump and is calling supporters to join in on an April Fool's Day attack by helping to shut down the billionaire's website and hack into in order to expose personal information about him. A video the hacker group released encourages supporters to target the website for Trump's Chicago luxury hotel, TrumpChicago.com, on April 1st as part of their Op Trump campaign. Anonymous has waged cyber attacks against Trump before and against other groups it opposes like ISIS, Scientologists, and the Ku Klux Klan. The Lone Star Lowdown is currently looking to fill some ad space. So if you have a product or a service you'd like to advertise with us, feel free to give me a call at 210-363-2257. This is Rick Brody with your Lowdown for March 16th, 2016.
Good friends, good evening and welcome here on this 24th of March. That would be a Thursday, March the 24th, 2016. It's 6 o'clock in the Central Time Zone, 7 o'clock here in Brooklyn, New York, where I am speaking to you from. And that means it's time for INN World Report Radio, International News Net World Report, here on the Great Logos Radio Network, every Tuesday and Thursday night, here at the same time, 6 till 8 p.m. So welcome. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight, the return of Roger Stone to this program. The first time we had Roger Stone on the show was back in November, I believe, and we've been trying to get him back on since. There's been a little bit of a jockeying back and forth, but we're scheduled to have Roger with us tonight in about 25 minutes or so. So plan your evening accordingly. It's going to be very interesting. An awful lot has happened since Roger was on the program the last time regarding, of course, the presidential primaries. And at that time, I think Roger Stone, a Republican operative, famous for having worked with Richard Nixon as a relatively young guy, I would say, probably back in those days, and has had a lot to do with partisan Republican politics. I think he was involved in the 2000 recount in Florida, and I think he was also involved with Eliot Spitzer, the governor of New York, who is no longer a governor. I think he had something to do with that. Maybe we can talk with him about that. But I certainly want to talk with him about Donald Trump, somebody who Roger has known for quite some time and has been encouraging to run for the presidency for quite some time. He says since 1988. So as I say, things have changed a good deal. There was a lot more people in the Republican primaries back when Roger was first on the show. Most of them are gone now. It's down to basically 3 candidates, it seems. That would be Trump, Cruz, y'all's senator there in Texas, and John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, former congressman and whiz kid in the budget and all of that sort of thing. And of course, on the Democratic side, there is still Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, although she can't seem to quite nail it. Bernie's like stuck like a piece of gum on her shoe, but he's hanging in there. But that's what we've got for you tonight. Why don't you give us a ring? 512-646-1984. The phone lines are open right now, and will be until Roger joins us. Let's see. And what do you think? You have any questions you'd like me to ask him? What do you think about the primaries in general? I'm getting some great email from you all. Please keep it coming. info@innradio.com. And I appreciate, of course, hearing from everybody. And I do my best. I usually respond to everyone, at least a few times. But that's that. I know somebody just sent me, I think Lawrence, somebody just sent me an email. I think it came in today, asking me to expound on what I've said on numerous occasions here on the show, that Julian Huxley, brother, I believe probably younger brother of Aldous Huxley, the famous writer, science fiction writer, Brave New World. He was an evolutionary biologist, whatever that means, and he a member of the upper crust, the British aristocracy, perhaps low level, but certainly one of the elites over there. And he worked at the United Nations. He was the first head of UNESCO, I believe, and I've been told by fairly reliable sources that, in his evolutionary biology studies, he was one of the people that found out that if you sexualize children, they become hypersexual adults. And that would be somebody who, had a hard time, very sexually active, but as a result, having a hard time forming a lasting bond with another person, certainly long enough to settle down and make a family and have children. And this apparently was of great interest to the powers that be in the time, because, they're always worried about too many of us rats, in the grain store. So anyhow, somebody wrote me and asked me to expound on that. I'd like to. I got that information from listening to the great Alan Watt. And I've corresponded with Alan, try to get him on the show. He's a very, very busy guy. He used to be on this network for a time, by the way, as you may recall. And, I'd love to have him on the show. So I'll try again. And I would certainly ask him to expound on that. So that's what's going to happen vis-a-vis that. I've tried again, and now I've been inspired by some of you all listening. That's what I'm going to do. But it certainly seems to be panning out, to be playing out right in front of us, doesn't it? I mean, I'm shocked at the difference between, the kind of sexual content that children are being exposed to today compared to, what I grew up with in the 1950s and early 60s. I mean, if you found a Playboy in the neighbor's trash can, man, that was hot stuff. That thing became like, you cleaned it off and you protected it and you looked at it and you saved it for as long as you could, and then it wasn't even total nudity back in those days, but now, I think it's a lot more, or I should say a lot less clothing on the billboards, it seems, certainly in the television and the movies and the radio, the stars on the radio and all that stuff. I think about Miley Cyrus all the time, this girl who came up through the Disney system with a very wholesome type of appearance. At least that's what I think. I never really watched the show. I could only tell from clips of it that I've seen or promotional material, but she certainly seemed like, a cute little kid. And obviously got a lot of young people, particularly young girls, following her because of her widespread distribution and promotion through Disney. And then I guess when she became 18, she just went off the deep end and is, just going nuts, it seems like, and at least to me, and trying to, I don't know, it's almost like, in any case, I believe it's the hypersexualization of children. I think it's a sad thing. I think it's yet another assault on civil society, which we seem to be experiencing from almost every direction. But what do you think? 512-646-1984. 1984. Let me see here. The attacks in Belgium, I really, it's just, I'm getting numb because there's so much of it. Surprisingly, more and more people are questioning how real all of this stuff is. No question that there's something real going on, but real in the sense of, are the people who we are being told are the perpetrators, are they really the perpetrators and so forth? And it's just a well-known fact that you want to get your population to hate other people, to fight other people, to be in fear of other people, to loathe other people. That terrorism is a great way to do it. It's a political tool to move people against their better nature. And we certainly have had a lot of that. It's just so much that it's getting numb. And, of course, the great example of it in our lifetime in recent history, fairly recent history, is the attacks on September 11th, which are full of, the official story is full of lies, just chock-packed full of lies. And because, the main area for discussion about this, the media, and then to a lesser extent academia, is totally bought and paid for. Many of those people are just plain stupid and they can't think through the issue. Those of them who are not realize that it's not what their owners want, their bosses want, and there's been an awful, and this is an ancient tactic, it's an age-old tactic of shunning people, and not because they're not telling you the truth, but because if they do tell you the truth, it'll cut a little too close to the bone somewhere, So, when it comes to the World Trade Center, you gotta remember, friends, that the top of those buildings came down almost as fast, just about as fast as a brick would come down if you just threw it over the side, if you were standing on the top. And that alone just tells you that the official story is absolutely crazy. The cold, hard steel, floor after floor after floor after floor, 80-some floors below, plus the basement where it gets really thick and strong, that has been holding that top of those towers up for decade after decade after decade. Cold, hard steel down there, holding that up. The part that's supposed to be crushing everything below it is the lightest part of the building, right? It just does not add up, okay? If you dropped a brick or a bowling ball off the top of the World Trade Center into a tank of water, it would take a lot longer to hit the ground than, if you had a really tall tank of water, 108 stories high, make it out of glass. So let's film it. Let's see how long it takes. Drop a brick through a tank of water that's 108 stories high, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Do you think it'll come down as fast as a brick falling through air? I don't think so. Do you think it'll come down as fast as the top of that tower did through all that cold, hard steel? What's stronger, water or steel? And then, let's make it a little closer to steel than water. Let's put Jell-O in the tank. All right, let's drop a brick through Jell-O. Let's get a tower filled, a hollow tower, make it out of plexiglass, and we'll put the TV cameras on there, and let's fill it with Jell-O. All right, and let's stand on top and drop a brick in it. How long do you think it'd take that brick to hit the bottom? I bet it wouldn't go more than a few feet in a bunch of Jell-O like that, right? What's stronger, Jell-O or steel? I ask you, my friends. Huh? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The media is just so lying to everybody that people are getting numb and, not believing half of this stuff anymore. And it's just so, at this point, I haven't even really looked into the Belgium attacks yet because I know it's going to be, there's going to be a passport laying around. There's going to be somebody's driver's license laying around. There's going to be somebody's fingerprint that's dead, all that stuff. Anyway, Tom Kiley, INN World Report. We're going to be right back in just a few moments. Give us a call, 512-646-1984. Does my Jell-O tank, water tank analogy give a good picture? I'd like to know. What does it sound like? Call me up and tell me.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Baby ambassador to England or France. May like to gamble, might like to dance. Maybe the heavyweight champion of the world. But you got to serve somebody.
Welcome back Mike, Tom, Kylie here, INN World Report Radio. That's the great Etta James singing Bob Dylan. You got to serve somebody. That's what we try to do here. We try to serve all y'all out there. And why don't you give us some feedback? Well, how does it come across? Are we doing our job? 512-646-1984. Oh, here we go. Somebody's going to give us a ring. And what about my analogy about a tank of water and a tank of Jell-O? If you can have a clear tank, I don't know, 4 feet by 4 feet square, and then just 108 stories high, a really thick plexiglass, I don't know, fix it up, really thick something, and, like a big fish tank, fill it with water, and, take a helicopter and hover over it and drop 2 bricks. Drop 1 brick into the tank of water, and at the same time, drop another brick right next to it through the thin air, and which brick is going to come and hit the ground first? Right now, this is not the old Galileo experiment where you take a little ball and a big ball and you drop them at the, a little iron ball like a baseball and a big iron ball like a bowling ball, and you drop the 2 of them. If you drop the both of them through air, they should hit the ground at the same time. If you drop them at the same time, depending, the only thing that would change that is resistance, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Okay, all that cold hard steel down there under the World Trade Center towers from the 80th floor down is resistance. That's what causes things to slow down when you drop them, okay? And it was like it wasn't there. The only way the towers could have come down that fast is if the resistance was gone. And the only way to do that is with explosives. And there's so many other things, weapons of mass destruction. Hey, weapons of mass destruction. The guest who we are supposed to be having here in about another 10 minutes or so, Roger Stone, deals with Donald Trump, who himself had the guts on stage at one of the Republican debates to say that weapons of mass destruction in Iraq was a lie. That was a big, fat lie, okay? It wasn't Donald Rumsfeld saying, we're really almost pretty doggone sure that they got – no. We not only do they have them, we know they have them, and we know where they have them, said Donald Rumsfeld. Okay? Not I think maybe, and a decision we are told was based on that we are told happened to go to war. 1 million dead Iraqis. No oops, no I'm sorry. It just is a lie. They're lying to you, the politicians and their media, okay? So another, you had this Brussels attack again. Or I don't have to look. I can tell you what they're going to find. Somebody left a passport somewhere. Somebody left a driver's license. Somebody left a receipt somewhere. And they can figure out who the guy is and all this stuff. I hear they caught somebody alive now. I don't know. Usually they catch him dead, but who knows? Hey. And then you had Timothy McVeigh there in Oklahoma City. His judge in Oklahoma City, he's getting his reward now, isn't he? Obama nominated him for the Supreme Court. Okay. And that's a safe nomination because the Republicans are going to try to block him. As if, the President of the United States has no right to nominate somebody. The guy's got almost a year left in office. Come on. They did that with her. But anyway, it's interesting. Very interesting to me. Let's see. I think we got a couple of callers here. Is anybody ready to go? All right. I got 2 callers on the line there, Deb. Looks like Chris and Julian. All right. You know what? She didn't catch you guys, so hold on. She's screening them right now, and we're going to get y'all live on the air real quick because I want to take your calls, and then Roger Stone. All right. I'm going to take Chris first. Oops, Chris, what happened? Did he just drop off? Hello, Chris? Oh, here he goes. Hold on. Here we go, Chris. Okay, Chris, are you there?
Yes.
All right, great, sir. Thanks for calling. What would you like to talk about?
The thing you just said about that Garland Merritt guy.
Yeah.
I heard, in the mainstream media, it just mentioned he was involved with the Oklahoma City bombing. Are you saying that he?
I believe he was the judge who presided over the Timothy McVeigh case. I can double check that.
Oh, wow.
And I tell you what, there's another thing. We're all concerned about diversity these days, and I think that's a good thing, right? And they're trying to provide diversity on the Supreme Court, which is a good thing, right? We've got more women now on the court than ever before, and, we've got more minorities, it seems, on the court than ever before. However, when I look it up, I find that this Judge Garland is, says that he's Jewish. That if he's confirmed, that would make the 4th Jewish Supreme Court justice on the court out of 9 justices, which seems to me to be going in the opposite direction of diversity, if you know what I mean, especially when you're dealing with a portion of the population that only represents maybe 1.2% of the United States. So what's that all about? I don't get that. I thought we were, especially Obama, was for diversity. I'm for diversity too, but especially, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me. Do you have any thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, yes, I'm for diversity as well, but not if the guy turned a blind eye to a false flag event. I mean, he's a criminal.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to research the case more. Certainly our friends out in Oklahoma City could help us on this. Maybe that's what we ought to do. Maybe we ought to reach out to some of our friends in OK City and get them on and have them tell us about Judge Garland.
Yes, we do, because Obama has put this guy forward. There's a lot of focus on him and this whole nomination constitutionality issue. But if the guy is, winking at and ignoring any of this false flag activity, well, we need to know about that. This could be where they put up the wrong guy, and if people focus on this one issue about him, it could bring down a lot of this evil hierarchy.
I don't know, they're pretty bold. They seem to be rubbing our face in it, but I don't know. Maybe the times they are changing. Maybe Donald Trump represents a wind of change. Listen, Chris, I only got a couple of minutes left before the end of the segment, and Julian's on the line. Do you mind if I jump over to him?
Well, quickly, let me just tell you that Jim Hightower from Texas and some other, over 2,000 people are going to sit in the congressional offices in the first couple of weeks of arrest. That committed themselves to get arrested to try to stop this oligarchy thing. So pay attention to that whole thing next month early.
Sorry about that. My organic alarm system's going off. Let's go to Julian next. Thank you, Chris. Hold on. I'm going to put Julian on.
Tom?
Yeah, Julian, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead. You got about 2 minutes.
Okay. All right, so, with this latest bombing over there in Brussels, and then all the subsequent talk coming from, talk radios and such and people, and that we got to go bomb more again over there or something, right? Heard that sort of thing. So have you heard anybody say, hey, why don't we stop maybe engaging in regime change policy, foreign policy, or a color revolution? Heard anybody say that? Probably
not. Nobody, unless they're on alternative media or Donald Trump, maybe. But this is the height of racism, isn't it? All these people are supposed to be so liberally minded and everything. But if you don't even consider what we've been doing over there, I don't know for who, because it doesn't seem like we're doing it for the United States, but what we've been doing over there, bombing people, killing people, blowing up wedding parties with drone strikes, and then waiting until the rescuers go in the double tap drone strike. They wait about 15, 20 minutes till people go into the wreckage to pull the bodies out, and then they shoot another missile in there to kill those people too. Is it any wonder people are angry with us?
Nope.
Makes perfect sense to me. And let me tell you, half these yahoos who say, yeah, we got to do this and we got to do that, what would they be saying if some other country was coming over here doing that to us?
Oh, yeah. Oh, and so now you also said you hadn't listened too much to some of the stuff about this tax thing over there in Brussels. But now they were saying one of the guys that there was a suspect that they had, guess what, DNA. They found DNA at the airport.
Yeah, there you go. Like they found the DNA. They found the DNA of everybody in the plane that hit the Pentagon, except for any DNA that comes from Arabia. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Julian, I got to jump in. We got Roger Stone next, friends. We'll be right back.
What's Sweet and Gooey? Available at your local supermarket. Costs about $3 and is known to slash your risk of cancer. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back with the answer in a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
If you're a jelly junkie, I've got sweet news for you. Researchers have found that pectin, the all-natural gel that binds liquid ingredients in jams and jellies, slows the growth and spread of cancer. Cancer cells form tumors by joining together with gooey receptors. Pectin, made from apples and the skins of citrus fruits, binds to those receptors before the bad cells can, eventually killing them. Some say pectin cures chronic joint pain and prevents arthritis, too. Though I can't vouch for that, it can't hurt to try this natural remedy. Turns out a spoonful of apple pectin a day may actually keep the doctor away. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Looking for some truth? You found it. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Welcome back, Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. You know, as they used to say of Clint Eastwood, when yet another of his movies came out, he's bad and he's back. And that would be our guest, Roger Stone. It's just too much to say about this man. He goes way back to when I was a young guy, an operative for Richard Nixon, heavily involved in the Republican Party, and all the way up to the present, where he has been, advising up until the recent past anyway, Donald Trump. I'm sure he's in regular communications with him. Roger, welcome back to INN.
Delighted to be back here. So much has changed since last time.
It was in November you were on the last time. There's a lot fewer candidates on the Republican side. There's maybe one fewer one on the Democratic Party side. And Donald Trump is rolling along. And, Roger, we have this incredible epic event going on here. The far right and the establishment of the Republican Party, the far left and the establishment of the Democratic Party. And they're all trying to bring this guy down. And much of the media on television, some not. Talk radio is a little better, I think. They're all trying to bring this guy down out in the open. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, although I guess I would argue that it's the conservative elites who don't represent, in my opinion, all that many voters, and the Republican establishment who have just demonstrated in the primaries that they don't represent very many voters. And then, of course, the left, which includes not only Clinton and Soros and the entire mainstream media machinery, but essentially the ruling class, the ruling elites, particularly the Wall Street, DC, K Street combine, are just scared to death of a Donald Trump presidency because he's not beholden to any particular special interest, because he hasn't solicited, nor will he solicit millions of dollars in special interest campaign contributions. So therefore, if you're a lobbyist particularly, and it's amazing how many of the leaders in the Republican Party wear that second hat as an profitable avocation, you can't peddle influence if you have no influence to peddle.
And they're not peddling influence because they're nice guys. They're peddling influence because that level of elitism is making more money now than perhaps ever before in recorded history while this country is going down the tubes. And apparently they want to keep it that way.
Yeah, that's really my essential argument. I mean, look, I am a critic of the Clintons and the Bushes. And I have written critiques of both Republicans and Democrats because for the last 30 years, while they specifically have enriched themselves beyond your wildest dreams, the country has been destroyed by their policies. It would be bad enough if they were looting and profiteering off of their status in government and we had a boom economy and a peace around the globe, but we have neither. And whether it is Bush or Clinton or Bush or Obama, the policies remain exactly the same. Endless war, erosion of civil liberties, massive debt and borrowing, bailouts for the big banks, high taxes on the working people, but tax breaks for Wall Street. It is I think the whole rise of Trump is a rejection of all of that. And that's why the establishment is so scared.
And it is a global rejection. Donald Trump is riding the U.S. version of that wave, but it's happening now all over the Western world, in Greece, in Portugal, in Ireland, in Spain, in England. They tried, and the same thing happens with Jeremy Corbyn in England. He's attacked by the elites on both sides of the fence, and like that. Now, Roger, my first awareness of you was back probably during the Watergate era. I was a young GI, and I used to listen to the hearings on the radio as I worked in Berlin, Germany, and working in a photo lab and stuff. And somewhere along the line, names like yours and even Karl Roves and Jeb Stuart Magruder and people like that would come up. And you, no question, I've always thought of you as a real dyed-in-the-wool partisan political guy, no question about it. But yet you seem to be transpartisan now. Is it fair to say that the difference is when the pie is big enough for most Americans to participate in, especially the middle class and those who aspire to come up into the middle class, partisan politics is fair play. But when it's this far out of kilter, we got to come together no matter what side we're on. Is that fair to say about you two?
Well, I guess my view is I have a great sentimental attachment to the Republican Party of Barry Goldwater. I was attracted to the party by the policies of Goldwater, which were small government, civil liberties, civil rights, limited government, strong national defense, a dynamic, growth-oriented economy. Unfortunately, that old Republican Party, the party of small government, almost doesn't exist today. What we have today are two parties that are identical. They're the Wall Street Party. They're the money that are funded and run by the special interests. So it is. I couldn't stomach the nomination of Mitt Romney. I left the Republican Party over the nomination of Romney. I'm still tickled when Romney runs around talking about Ronald Reagan. I handled Massachusetts in Ronald Reagan's 1980 campaign. Mitt Romney wasn't for Ronald Reagan. He openly supported and endorsed Paul Tsongas, the left-wing senator from Massachusetts. He was on his finance committee. 1984, Mitt Romney still wasn't even a Republican. Did not, again, decline to support Ronald Reagan. And then he calls Donald Trump a phony. There's the irony right there.
Well, yeah, Mitt Romney, I mean, the way that one wonders, what did they have to do to him to wind him up and wheel him out to spew that 2 seconds of vitriol that flew back in his face? And about the only thing that came of it was Ted Cruz got Utah.
Yeah, I mean, he was, recall, he wanted to run himself in this cycle, but he was talked out of it because he believed that Jeb was unstoppable. Think about that for a moment. And of course, many of the Bush money people are the same people who are the Romney money people. So he was very aggressively cross-pressured not to run. Now he regrets that. By the way, it's not too late for him to get in the late primaries. He could file in California, New Jersey, a handful of others, but he won't. Instead, he is hoping for a deadlock, and he's hoping that the kingmakers in the Republican Party will turn to him. He's all made up and in the bullpen right now. He's all suited up, trust me, trying to figure out some way to wangle this nomination as a compromise candidate of the establishment. Marco is damaged. Jeb is out of the question. Ted Cruz is really stylistically not the cup of tea for the establishment, although his policies are perfectly okay with him. He voted for TPP. He voted for amnesty. He's the architect of the Bush spending policies and the Bush immigration policies as an aide to George W. Bush. So, he's an Ivy League country club Republican posing as a hillbilly, but he's not really a constitutional.
With a Wall Street banker wife, right?
Yes, he was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and who wrote a brilliant paper on the North American Accord, the proposed consolidation of the governments of Canada, the United States, and Mexico into one government, which has to be the worst idea I've ever heard.
Talk about big government. That's big government for you. And so Romney's hoping, and is this guy crazy enough to think that he has any better shot than he did last time, or does he realize they would be just dressing him up to be a sacrificial lamb for Hillary Clinton, like he ended up being a sacrificial lamb for Barack Obama?
Well, I think it is unlikely that he could beat Hillary Clinton. On the other hand, let's not pretend that she isn't running with an enormous amount of baggage. I mean, she's virtually got a steamer trunk on her back. Yeah. When you look at these recent polls that show Trump trailing her slightly, he's always in range. And it's important to point out that Bernie has never hit her where it hurts. He's never talked about the war she and her husband have waged on individual women. They've never talked about her role in covering up his sex crimes, Juanita Broderick, the assault of Kathleen Willey, the assault of Paula Corbin Jones that he settled out of court for $850,000, the assaults of dozens of other women. He's never hit her on her disastrous tenure as the U.S. Secretary of State, where she appeared to be working for the Muslim Brotherhood instead of the United States of America.
And where she attacked the entire female population of Libya. Hold on, Roger. Friends, we'll be right back. This is Roger Stone. We're just getting warmed up. We have a few more segments with him. I hope you stay with us. And Roger, let's talk about your book also when you get back. Just tell everybody real quick the name of the new book.
It's Jeb and the Bush Crime Family. It's an examination of an American...
Easy.
All right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio, and we're really going for it tonight. Again, the second time on the show, Roger Stone. I hope to have him on several more times while this cycle plays out, because he's very insightful. He's been around a long time, and I got to tell you, Roger, I'm with you. You know, I think we're relative same age, but that partisan stuff is off as far as I'm concerned. We got to come together, meet in the middle. This country's going down the tubes.
Well, I've reached a certain point at which I finally figured out that the left-right divide is a Hegelian device that is used to distract us from the fact that there is a power elite running the country. They have no ideology. They're neither left nor right. They just believe in power and money and control in order to keep the power and the money. Look, I find incredibly I have a lot in common with Bernie Sanders supporters. Not as hard left supporters, of course, but the ones who realize that we're getting screwed by these enormous globalist national trade deals, that they have systematically sucked the blood out of our country, just as Ross Perot predicted they would, and that the Clintons and the Bushes are those that have brought us these policies. Now that it's an election year, suddenly Hillary's decided her support of NAFTA was a mistake, and she'll change her mind again when she becomes president and gets back on board. It's such an obvious ruse. It's very hard for me to understand how any voter, any Democratic voter, could buy that.
And what about, has anyone asked her yet? How does she feel about her husband's brilliant idea to get rid of Glass-Steagall?
That's an interesting question. I don't know, but I do think that their entire the irony here is that Hillary is succeeding in her contest with Bernie on the basis of African-American voters, which is ironic because the only place that she wants to feed poor black people is in a prison cafeteria.
Yep.
Her husband is the one responsible for the mass incarceration of what's probably millions of young black men for the possession of small amounts of drugs and their famous 3 strikes you're out legislation, which was just designed to get him reelected. He, as I have said in my book, The Clintons' War on Women, Bill Clinton has an abandoned, rejected African-American son, Danny Williams, of Little Rock, Arkansas, who was the product of Bill's union with a cocaine-addicted African-American prostitute, Bobby Ann Williams. A DNA test reported by the Washington Post in 1996 is a total fraud. I traced the origins of this alleged test and who allegedly promulgated the story, and it's entirely false. So Black Lives Matter to Hillary Clinton, unless you're Danny Williams, who she, according to those around Bill Clinton at the time, is the one who banished from the governor's circle. Bill Clinton was sending, through a Arkansas state trooper, Christmas presents to the small shack where his son lived as a boy. But it's Hillary who basically tells the family if they come anywhere near the Clintons, they're going to be arrested.
Well, yeah, there's a great deal of hypocrisy to go around. I can't believe that the women who support her, and it's not younger women apparently. You know, I made a video I sent you. Actually, I don't know if you got it or not, but I call it Hillary's Burkas Incorporated. And she's got the exclusive distribution rights for all the women of Libya, you know, and soon Syria too, because feminism begins and ends at home, apparently, with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, no, it's extraordinary. So in Libya, under Gaddafi, women could own property, women could drive a car, women could be educated, women could go to college, women who were raped would have their rapists prosecuted. Now, all those things in post-Clinton Libya are illegal under Sharia law.
Yeah.
So she set women in that country back 200 years.
Yeah.
In the next breath, she tells us she's an advocate for women and girls.
Yeah, you know, that's a great way to put it. And if you don't mind, I'm going to start saying it that way from here on out. Post-Clinton Libya. I think we need to remind people of that.
Yeah, she holds herself out as an advocate for children, but as I document in the book, according to both the House and the Senate investigations, it's Hillary Clinton, the co-president of the United States, who gives the order to assault the compound of the Branch Davidians in Waco, in which 18 children under the age of 8 are murdered. But she's an advocate for children. Remember, she handpicks Janet Reno as Attorney General, and she handpicks Janet Reno's deputy, Webster Hubbell.
Before we get on to the new book, we do have some time with you. There are a couple of other things I wanted to bring up that have transpired since you were on the show before. And, you know, it started off with these rumblings about the Trump Nazi fascist brown shirts beating up protesters at Donald Trump's rallies. And then it came to a crescendo a couple of weeks ago when George Soros's team, MoveOn.org, shut down basically Trump's rally in Chicago. Now, I've been in a debate with a lot of my liberal brothers and sisters about this stuff. If Trump was the fascist that they claim he was, wouldn't he be the one who had the brown shirts who were shutting down everybody else's rallies rather than it being the other way around?
Well,
number one.
I think it's pretty clear that this is a false flag operation. I was very interested to see the purposeful attempt of the mainstream media to buy into the canard that these were Bernie Sanders supporters. These were hard left agitators paid for by George Soros, a scheme dreamed up by David Brockett. Media Matters for America, pardon me. And it is with the complicity of Rahm Emanuel and the community organizations surrounding the mayor of Chicago, another Clinton supporter. And then they blame Bernie. And this tactic has two important goals. One is, of course, to try to provoke the Trump people to violence. But the other one, which they can then blame on Trump, but the other one is a slow recognition that many of Bernie Sanders' economic voters, not his hard left voters, but his economic voters, could end up with Donald Trump in the fall because they are aware now that these international trade deals like NAFTA have destroyed their livelihood, have destroyed the job market throughout the Rust Belt. So it's an effort now to disqualify Trump for those voters as a racist, as a bigot, as a Nazi. We've seen this all before. These are the same tactics that were used on Barry Goldwater in 1964. When the establishment woke up and figured out they couldn't stop him from the Republican nomination, they went out with all due haste to smear him. And sadly, many in the Republican Party, Nelson Rockefeller, Governor George Romney, Mitt's father, Bill Scranton of Pennsylvania, the governor, Jacob Javits of New York, these people didn't care about the general election. They didn't care about whether the Republicans lost in the fall. They could do business with Lyndon Johnson. You see the same thing here. The professional class in the Republican Party, as long as they hold on to the Senate and the House, believe that they can do business with Hillary Clinton because she's essentially transactional. She's not really a liberal or a progressive. She's a crony capitalist.
Crony capitalist, no question about it. Now, you know a thing or two about dirty tricks, and I would say in politics, I'm just guessing. And, this certainly was a big one in Chicago. Doesn't logic follow that the next big dirty trick is going to be somebody breaking heads at a Clinton rally or a Bernie Sanders rally with Trump T-shirts on? And shouldn't Donald Trump preempt that sort of thing and disavow it in advance while demanding at the same time Bernie and Hillary disavow the kind of violence that people are trying to do to his campaign?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea. I think that what's happened here is the ruling class has figured out these multi-million-dollar negative television and radio campaigns they have waged against Trump that they were confident would end his surge and bury his candidacy haven't worked. In Florida, where I am tonight, they spent $40 million combined against Trump, squeezed into essentially a 10-day period prior to the Florida primary, and it moved virtually no one, which is the first time I've ever seen this in American politics, and certainly the first time that the insiders have seen it. So now they are falling back to this new tactic of trying to tie Trump to the violence being incited by the Clinton campaign. Notice that Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush all blame Trump for the violence at Trump's rallies.
Yeah, and I think Donald Trump should be demanding that the media demand for disavowal of this kind of thing from all other parties, like they demanded a disavowal of David Duke, even though apparently he disavowed the guy 10 years earlier. Why can't he make a point out of this hypocrisy? I don't get it. I'm frustrated. I watch the TV and I'm saying, if you tell me, Roger, what would we be seeing if the shoe was on the other foot and it was legitimately Donald Trump people breaking heads at a Hillary Clinton or a Bernie Sanders rally?
Oh, the media would go insane. There's no question about it. But, look, I hope you're wrong about that. I hope that doesn't happen, but it is kind of logical. You're going to have a slugfest here. It's ironic to me that Cruz keeps saying over and over again that Trump cannot beat Hillary Clinton, when in fact I think he's the only one who can beat Hillary Clinton because he's fearless. He will have no compunction whatsoever about raising Bill's true record as a serial rapist and as an assaulter of women, and Hillary's role as an accessory after the fact in all of those sex crimes where she runs the cover-up, where she actively threatens witnesses, where she personally threatens some of his victims, where she uses heavy-handed private detectives to do it elsewhere. The idea that she can just walk away from that, as some Republicans have said, I believe it was Rubio and Bush and Kasich who all said Bill's sexual history is off the table. Well, no, it isn't. It's not irrelevant at all.
Well, hold on, because we're going to be off the table in 1 second here. We'll be All right, good friends, welcome back. Hour number 2 just starting here. And without further ado, let's get going, because this is a very, very busy man, as you can imagine. We're talking with Roger Stone, political operative, author, obviously somebody who's got a lot to say. Roger, the new book, which is about the Bush family, I want you to tell us about that, number one. But before we do, in your research, did you take a look at Russ Baker's book about the Bush crime family?
Yes, Russ's book is a terrific book. Russ Baker is a good friend of mine.
All right.
He's acknowledged a number of places in my book. I've used material from his book with attribution.
Good.
I have some things that he does not have. He had some things that I don't have. But the idea here, of course, was that I knew George H.W. Bush's authorized biography by John Meacham was coming on the market, and I knew that the Bushes would promote it as an overall part of their effort to promote Jeb. And they have. And therefore, this book is the antidote to that book. That book is an extraordinary whitewash of the financial and geopolitical crimes of the Bushes, which goes all the way back to the beginning. Samuel Bush makes his money in the poppy trade, essentially a drug trafficker. Prescott Bush, the U.S. Senator from Connecticut, the father of George H.W. Bush, is Adolf Hitler's personal banker. He is responsible for arranging the financing for the Nazi war machine. In 1942, the Roosevelt administration seizes his bank for treasonous activity. George H.W. Bush, endlessly ambitious, runs 6 times for vice president before he finally finagles his way onto the ticket with Reagan, dissembles about where he was on the day Kennedy was killed, runs a drug trafficking operation as vice president to illegally finance Nicaraguan Contras, avoids prosecution by stonewalling the Iran-Contra special prosecutor, refusing to be questioned, refusing to turn over documents. That is, of course, not in the official biography. The many odd questions surrounding the Reagan assassination and the Bush's ties to it in the very first year of the Reagan administration. So it's an entire overview of the arc of crime of the Bush family, with a special emphasis, of course, on Jeb. Jeb is a guy who never made an honest dollar in his life. He's not a businessman, as he says. He's an influence peddler. He's a guy who gets a carried interest in the deal for the use of his last name and a few friendly phone calls to decision makers. Yeah. 5 of his partners from 5 different business endeavors are in prison.
You know, it's something that I used to scream until I was blue in the face about it, and I just kind of gave up. But you touch on it now. You remind me now. The Christmas Eve pardon of Caspar Weinberger, right, by H.W. Bush. You know, I was a nut back in those days in what was the alternative media such as it was, and I read an awful lot, and I was waiting. The talk back in those days, I don't know if you cover this in your book or not, but the talk back in those days is that, you know, Weinberger's notes contradict what Bush says under oath to Lawrence Walsh, right? Weinberger is indicted on something like 5 counts. All of this is going to come out in his trial, and what happens, you know, in the last waning hours of the Bush administration on Christmas Eve when nobody's looking, Poppy Bush pardons Weinberger, thereby shutting that down. And then, by the way, I spoke with John Conyers about this in Denver in 2008. We need to have a law that says you can't pardon somebody who hasn't been convicted of something yet, just to prevent that. Okay, the king is the president's not the king. All right.
Well, so that of course would prevent Obama from his upcoming pardon of Hillary in the email scandal, because that's precisely what he's going to do.
Well, and I'm all for that. But then to follow that up, Poppy Bush blows off his subpoena. What is it? To speak with Lawrence Walsh, and they lean on new young Bill Clinton to say, "Let's just forget about this. Let's just you get off on the right foot." And he gets away with it. Is that in your book?
Yes, that's all in my book. And if they had dug deep enough, they would have found that Caspar Weinberger had an unnumbered Swiss bank account with millions and millions of dollars from the drug trade in and out of Mena, Arkansas, according to Barry Seal and the records that were found in Seal's trunk after he was murdered. Seal was a CIA drug trafficker of some note who was working for the Central Intelligence Agency when George Bush, as vice president, was overseeing an interagency secret clandestine operation to traffic cocaine into Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas into rural airports, where it was taken as far as Los Angeles for distribution. And Seal has problems with the IRS. Seal warns Bush that if the IRS doesn't get off his back, in other words, if Bush doesn't back them off, that he's going to expose Jeb and George W. Bush and the fact that they were apprehended bringing a kilo of cocaine into Opa-locka Airport in Miami for redistribution. But roughly a week later, Barry Seal is murdered in New Orleans. The three men who are arrested for his murder are Colombian nationals, but they all insist at trial that they're working for the U.S. government and they were being run by a U.S. Army colonel, who we presume to be Oliver North. So, by the way, it is indisputable that Seal dies, and they find in his wallet a folded up piece of paper with the unlisted phone number at the White House, the direct extension for Vice President George H.W. Bush, pardon me.
Well, he has a habit of, being in touch with people right before they die. Remember George DeMorenshield in the Kennedy assassination? That was another guy who appealed to George Bush to get the bad guys off his case, too, right? And what happened to him?
He ends up dying either by his own hand or was murdered just prior to being called to testify before the House Assassinations Committee in 1978. Yes, once again, when they find his address book, he has the unlisted direct phone number for Vice President George Bush. At that point, CIA Director George Bush.
I got to see if I have his number in my wallet, because if I do, I better quickly get rid of it, because yes, it looks like
you'll get whacked.
It's a bad omen, isn't it? So, yeah, it's pretty amazing, all of this stuff. And, Roger, the only way I can see that this stuff can possibly happen is if there's a complicit media. What do you have to say about that very, very important component in this?
Well, I think that's the entire point here. It's very interesting that NBC, as you know, is one of the few news outlets that interviewed Juanita Broaddrick, who was the volunteer in Bill Clinton's 1978 campaign, who was raped, assaulted, and bitten by Bill Clinton. And her interview is just breathtaking. You can see it on YouTube. But last week she wrote an article. For the first time, she revealed that when in her NBC interview, she said that Hillary had approached her and threatened her face-to-face. Afterwards, a director, I should say a producer for NBC, jumps up and yells, "Cut!" And they stop right there, and she says, "We can't go there. We don't want to talk about Hillary." So it's a perfect example of how the media is entirely complicit in this entire endeavor, in this entire cover-up of the elitist crimes of both the Bushes and the Clintons.
And it goes way back. You mentioned Prescott Bush. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I'd be curious to know what you think about it. It's my understanding that Franklin Roosevelt intended for there to be two sets of Nuremberg trials, the one that we know about, and a second one for the financiers, the bankers, the industrialists who were responsible for supporting and creating Hitler and his power. And, of course, Franklin Roosevelt died funny right at the end of the war. Before that could be actualized, Joe Stalin later on tells Roosevelt's son that the British had him killed because he and Stalin were working together. They were going to essentially start to dismantle colonialism, but not before they put Harry Truman in place, lest Roosevelt's very radical vice president take over. And of course, Truman is essential in the establishment of Israel right afterwards. Is that in your book about how Roosevelt was struggling with these industrialists and bankers during the war, and how he wanted to have a trial for them?
Well, no, that is not addressed. What is addressed, of course, is the involvement of Prescott Bush in a coup attempt against Roosevelt early in the Roosevelt term, when Roosevelt's policies were viewed as radical and radical left by the financial class. But it would be indisputable Roosevelt was in very, very poor health when he ran for a fourth term.
Right.
It was not surprising that he would die, shortly after his election, given the stress levels. But I'd never heard the theory that he was perhaps murdered. Interesting.
Yeah. It was in Parade magazine that Joseph Stalin reportedly told, in 48, I think, I don't even know, I think that's when it was, told Roosevelt's son that he had been killed by the British. Roosevelt's son subsequently, I think in the 60s, maybe mentions this. They think he might have been poisoned. There was a Russian emigre woman who was at his place in Georgia, painting, and, there's speculation maybe she was slipping him some poison. There was never an autopsy or anything like that. But, whatever. I mean, who knows? But I always felt it was sad that we didn't get that second trial. And certainly these people were guilty of sin. The Dulles brothers were involved, with financing a lot of this stuff too with the Nazis,
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show you that the people have strange loyalties, but it's all covered up. The media doesn't seem to do anything. And the media, Roger, is completely lost for words right now as the American people start to take matters into their own hands and support a guy like Donald Trump. They can't fathom why this is happening. And even if they could, they wouldn't be allowed to talk about it. What do you think about that? What is it with the media?
They disagree with what they view as his ideological objectives. He is a nationalist. He believes in American sovereignty. They are globalists. They believe in globalism. Yeah. They believe in world government, not the sovereignty of U.S. government. It's the fundamental divide. It is Donald Trump against the world. Yeah. I don't have to tell you that the 7 largest media companies in the country are all controlled by enormous corporations, all of whom oppose the agenda of Donald Trump. They're all globalists. So I think that's your fundamental issue here.
And nationalism is making a big comeback around the world. In Europe now, in a lot of places, Roger, you've been around long enough. I'm not particularly a right person or a left person. I'm a balancing person. If things are too far to the right, I'm going to go to the left to find balance, to help create balance. But, I think that we've gone so far to the left for so long now that the powers that be have shifted and said, fine, we'll use the left to get what we want done too. And now there's an out of balance that way. When I grew up, nationalism was a dirty word. Now it's something that we need desperately, it seems.
Well, Europe has, of course, experienced this, the backlash of illegal immigration or a flawed immigration system. And you don't have to be a genius to understand that what we are seeing in France and Germany is headed this way. Enormous mobs of Arab young men raping, killing, raping children, defecating in public fountains, defacing public property, turning over burning cars and trucks, raping children. I mean, this is what's headed our way. There is a crime wave headed this way if we don't get serious about sealing our borders.
All right, hold on. Let's hold it right there. We've got one more segment, friends, with Roger Stone. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with him just after this.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
All right, good friends, welcome back. One more segment with Roger Stone. Very busy guy. We're so glad to have him on the show. Roger, we got to make sure it's not going to be like 5 months next time before you come back on. Is that okay?
Yes, that'd be great.
We're going to do that. All right, great. So before we finish up, friends, stonezone.com, if you want to get the latest musings, writings, and books and so forth from our guest, Roger Stone. And Jeb Bush and the Bush Crime Family is the new book. When did it come out?
It came out in November.
Okay. All right.
Doing extraordinarily well. And look, with Neil Bush, this is really extraordinary. Neil Bush, of course, is George H.W. Bush's black sheep son. His defrauding of an SNL in the 1980s cost U.S. taxpayers $1.5 billion. A federal investigation by the FDIC found that he was guilty and there was criminal intent, but he was never indicted, nor did he spend a day in jail. Last week, he was announced as co-chairman of Ted Cruz's finance committee. I kid you not.
Well, I guess Ted wants to get the money, and why not get somebody like that who knows how to do it, right?
I think it's just a demonstration, again, that Cruz, despite his hillbilly act, is part of the power elite.
Yeah.
He is an establishment politician whose career is funded with gas and oil contributions. His rap about special interests is an absurdity. He is owned by the gas and oil lobby.
Yeah. Now, what about Marvin Bush? You talk about Marvin Bush. Wasn't that guy in charge of security at the World Trade Center?
Well, he definitely was a shareholder in a company that had that contract. He also, interestingly enough, owns a number of the patents that pertain to the curriculum and the textbooks that would be used in the Common Core curriculum. This is, I think, the principal reason why Jeb was pushing Common Core, a centralized federal curriculum. Yeah. Once again, the Bush family hoped to profiteer on the basis of their insider deal. Jeb, by the way, is someone who made millions on Obamacare and also made millions on Obama Phones, the program in which they give cell phones to poor people. He is a partner with Carlos Slim, the Mexican billionaire, in TracFone, the company that has the largest Obamacare contract. So again, these are not business arrangements that the average person could get access to. These are the special deals of the power elite.
Yeah, and interesting, talking about Marvin Bush and the World Trade Center and so forth, Donald Trump, he seems to be crazy like a fox because he says stuff that a lot of people feel is outrageous. But when you go back and try to do the Oppo research on him, oftentimes you come up empty-handed. I got to tell you, it was absolutely shocking. Since you were on last time, he's saying the weapons of mass destruction was a lie. And they knew it was a lie. I mean, that's the truth. He's not playing by the rules. You don't talk the truth in these games, do you?
No, look, I think he blew the Bushes away because he was willing to talk about the origins of the Iraq War. He was willing to talk about the 29 pages of the 9/11 Commission report that are redacted. He was and held confidential because they reveal the involvement of the Saudi royal family. He was on the cusp of revealing that Jeb Bush knew that a number of the hijackers trained under his nose in Florida, had multiple reports from the state police, did nothing about it. I think this is one of the principal reasons Jeb got out of the race. So, no, he's been very bold, and that's why I think he can beat Hillary. There is no place he won't go in the broad cross-section of the Clintons' many crimes.
Which begs the question, and nobody knows more about opposition research than you, that I've had on the show anyway. What are they going to try to dig up on Donald Trump? I'm sure he's got some embarrassing things or things he's not proud of. We all do. Does he feel confident that when that stuff comes out, he'll be able to parry or there's not? I don't know. You're from Europe now. Oh, he's worked with the mob to get all that construction done and everything. How does he feel about his, throwing rocks at glass houses?
I think there are no vulnerabilities we don't know about. You've heard them all. Yes, he definitely bought concrete from a company in New York City that was controlled by Fat Tony Salerno. So did the city of New York. So did the state of New York. And the state of New York issued that company a license.
Well,
I'm not seeing the crime.
Yeah, as Rodney Dangerfield once said in that movie Back to School when he was trying to teach the economics professor, he said, you're leaving some money out of your budget. If you want to build this thing with concrete, you're going to need a little money for the boys,
Yes.
That was in Back to School.
Very good imitation.
I tell you, I got a million of them, I got a million of them anyways. The other thing that he just sort of unsheathed a little bit, that sword about 9/11, it happened on your brother's watch. He could have really drove that point home if he wanted to, I suppose, by saying, hey, your national security advisor, Condoleezza Rice, was lying. She said, who could have thought of it? Well, the military was doing drills on that on the very day. So, what's that lie all about, number one? And number two, okay, fine. You want to say that you were new in the office, 9 months, whatever it is. But then the buck stops here. Who did you fire? Who did you reprimand?
No, they gave George Tenet a medal when he left.
Right. And all the people in the military
knew exactly what was going on. No, look, I think the irony, of course, was the mainstream media press, which immediately said this is going to hurt Trump among Republicans, particularly in South Carolina, where the Bush family is revered. Really? Jeb got pounded in South Carolina. You got to hand it to Karl Rove and the Bush people because they did, to a great extent, create their own reality. And they convinced Republicans that George Bush somehow acted courageously and that he kept us safe when, obviously, by definition, since 3,000 people roughly died on 9/11 because of an attack on the country that they had ample advance warning of, he clearly did not keep us safe.
And how did he react by killing 1 million innocent people that had absolutely nothing to do with it, based on another lie about the weapons of mass destruction and on and on? So, yeah, I mean, this is Trump's great strength, if you ask me. This is what I keep telling people. He's talking the truth, and it is so uncommon. It is so rare anymore that they don't know how to respond. The millions of dollars aren't doing anything against it. It's an extraordinary moment, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's the most revolutionary time in our politics. Trump is doing things through free media that one never would have thought possible.
Well,
without polling of any kind to guide him, speaking solely out of his gut and his heart, but no sophisticated polling testing the saliency or popularity of his ideas and proposals. It makes it even more extraordinary.
And more difficult to counter, I would say. I've said it on the air. I'll say it again. And if you ever speak to Donald again, you can mention this to him. My wife and I have never voted Republican in our lives, ever. Okay? And I am old enough to have voted for Ronald Reagan. I was not a Reagan Democrat. I loathed the Reagan Democrats because I think they were slitting their own throat by instituting trickle down and all the rest, and we've seen what's happened since. But I'm voting for the man, not the party, absolutely. And I think there's millions of more people like me, and they seem to be showing up in the primaries.
Yeah, it's amazing that in the Florida primary, for example, 25% of the people who showed up did not vote 2 years ago or 4 years ago. I mean, Trump is bringing literally millions of new people into the process, either people who gave up on the two-party duopoly and stopped voting because they've just figured out politics is rigged against the common man, or people who have never voted and this is their first time. So the Republican Party should be welcoming Donald Trump. Instead, they're going to try to steal the nomination from him in Cleveland, even if he should hit the magic number of 1,237 delegates.
Well, a lot's been said about the Republican Party, going by the wayside. And then they said Donald Trump was going to destroy it. Well, he can actually save it, much like Roosevelt saved capitalism, I suppose. But it would have to be a much different party, which I'm sure the elites wouldn't like. But he could return it more to the party of Lincoln, couldn't he?
Yes, he certainly could. I think you'd get a completely different Republican Party. We're going to have to break the strings of special interest control of our government and our politics if we're ever going to save the country, because the capitalists will sadly sell us down the river, ironically.
I think the problem is what I've called unbridled capitalism. Any system that has humans in it is going to have a problem, and that includes capitalism. It's not a gift from God. It's a very human creation. But, Roger, I want to thank you for coming back on the show. StoneZone.com, Jeb Bush and the Bush Crime Family, the new book. And, Roger, it's not going to be 5 months before you come back on the show next time, is it?
Definitely not. This was great. Many thanks.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. StoneZone.com. Thank you, Roger. Friends, we're going to be on the air for a good another half hour. What do you think? 512-646-1984. Give us a call and let us know what you think of that interview with Roger Stone and anything else.
In Wisconsin, an elderly woman who housed orphans was about to lose her home to foreclosure when her 12-year-old grandson came to the rescue. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back with the story of Noah the Dreamcatcher after this.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
For years, Janice Sparhawk cared for dozens of orphans, many dropped on her doorstep after dark. But at 72, she was in trouble. Her health failing, she couldn't pay the mortgage. Unless she found $10,000, the bank would foreclose. She appealed to her congressman, her governor, and even the president, but it was her grandson Noah who saved the day. The 12-year-old posted her story on a website he'd created 3 years earlier, Noah's Dreamcatcher Network, to help hurricane victims. Within days, enough money had poured in to rescue Sparhawk, her foster kids, and their faith in America. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
We'll be kidding about chemtrails.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
All right, good friends, we're back on the air. We've got another 30 minutes or so, and let's hear from you. 512-646-1984. How did it go with Roger Stone? Second time on his show. I do want to have him on more often during this whole election cycle. It is a very different race than it was 5 months ago or so when he was on with us in November. There was, 10, 12 candidates on the Republican side. It's down to like 3 now. And the Democrats, of course, they only had 3 all along, basically. And the governor from Maryland, ducked out pretty quickly. That was a coronation on the Democratic Party side. I think they just had Bernie running just to make it look like it was a contest. Usually they skip the whole the primaries are a formality, I guess, when there's a sitting president. They don't run anybody against him. But that's basically how they treated Hillary, like she was a sitting president already, and they needed somebody out there. They also, by the way, I don't know if you realize this, friends, the Democratic Party really did try to game the whole primary system and debating and everything else to not let you see Hillary Clinton under the microscope too much, not let you see her in debates too much, certainly not with many people there. And when Bernie was doing so well, they kind of thought that might not have been a good idea. But she's not doing great. I mean, when you consider the fact that she's the anointed one, got all this money behind her, all kinds of real debate has been shut off on the Democratic Party side, unlike the Republican Party side, where it's the wild, wild west, right? But there are other good people. Tulsi Gabbard, the congresswoman from Hawaii, she's dynamite. She's great. I would vote for her in a heartbeat, probably over Trump, actually, if the Democrats were smart enough to have somebody like her. Tulsi Gabbard, you got to look her up, friends, if you haven't already. Democratic congresswoman from Hawaii, served in Iraq. and just really, like Trump, telling it like it is about what a mistake it was to be in these places and so forth. Elizabeth Warren, who, has said a lot of good things, but has wavered somewhat, certainly on Israel and a few other things, but at least she's talking the right stuff. She wanted to see us do something about college debt and other things. And there are other people, but Hillary Clinton is just the ossified opportunist, no question about it. And I tell you, I wish you'd call 512-646-1984. Is it just me? But when you hear these politicians in these primaries on both sides, besides Trump, talking about, and we're gonna bring back jobs, and we're gonna, this and that, it's like, where the hell have you people been for the last 10, 20, 30 years? I've been hearing this garbage. I used to hear that garbage back when times were really good compared to the way things are right now. It's the same stuff. And that's why people are turning their back on the established candidates. That's why there's so many people, such enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, because they've beaten a dead horse to death. My father used to say, you can't beat a dead horse to death. All right. They're flogging a dead horse. It ain't happening. As you heard Roger Stone say, $40 million they spent against Trump in like 10 days in Florida. They don't know what to do. Their money ain't working no more. Their negative ads aren't working. I didn't want to interrupt Roger, but I was going to say it's validation when you see so much money being aimed against Trump by the fat cats. That's the best advertisement yet that the guy's onto something, isn't it? And it's frustrating them because money ain't working anymore. Rachel Maddow ain't working anymore. Fox News ain't working anymore for them. They can't just say whatever they want. People don't care. That's, what are you going to get with Trump? I'm not sure what I'm going to get with Donald Trump. I know what he's saying before the election, but I am sure I know what I'm going to get with Hillary Clinton. There's going to be more dead people in the Middle East with angry family members who are left over, more innocent people murdered, killed. For what exactly again? Why are we going into Syria? What's the latest? Because the Assad family killed some protesters? Really? Really? We used to kill protesters too in this country. Sure. Should other countries have come in to shut us down? Oh, yeah. And it was even up until the 1960s. When I was a kid, they killed Martin Luther King because, he started getting into opposing the Vietnam War. That was the end of that. Bang. Okay. It was like a trifecta. John F. Kennedy, and then Kennedy in 63, 68, a few years later, Martin King, and then Bobby Kennedy. And around that time, too, Malcolm X. And African Americans in this country said enough already, and they started to tear things down, burn parts of major American cities. I saw the smoke myself rising up from Washington, D.C. when I lived about 14 miles out in the suburbs. Fortunately, here in New York City, we didn't have anything like that because our vibrant young mayor at the time, John Lindsay, did the unthinkable. He went up to Harlem, took his jacket off and met with the people and walked down the streets, and they kept it together here in New York, thank goodness. But people were burning the cities down. And guess what? They were being killed by sniper teams who had lookbooks, I'm told. Targeting. Here's the real rebel rousers that we know about. If you see any one of these guys, give them a bullet in the head from that rooftop over there. That was happening. Well, guess what? That's the basis of why we toppled the government in the Ukraine, because the government was shooting its own protesters. When actually what happened in the Ukraine is we sent special people in there to shoot at the government, and of course the government shot back. They don't tell you that part about how we shot first. And the same thing, then Hillary's emails even reveal, we had to go into Libya because we had to protect the Libyan people from their president. Libya was the number one country in Africa. All right. And Muammar Gaddafi brought it up to be the number one country in Africa from being the last country in Africa. Africa is a big place, my friends. You could probably fit the United States inside of Africa at least 2 times, maybe 3. It's a really, really big place. All right. And it's rich with natural resources. And the people there traditionally have not, utilized them that much or were that interested. So, Europeans have come in there. Americans now have come in there. And the whole thing is, if it was really a free market, what a nice world it would be, right? If it was a free market. Wouldn't it be nice if it was really a free market like they like to say? Because we'd come in with all our capital. because we want to, whatever, we need their materials. They got oil there too. Could come in there and say, hey, we got to build these lithium batteries for all these cell phones. You all got this stuff in the ground, and it's going for X amount per pound, and here's the money, you take it, fix yourselves up, get yourself some roads or whatever you need, give it to your people, whatever. No, but we don't want to do that. We want it for nothing. No free market. The last thing they want is a free market. They send in the army. And that's after they corrupt the local politicians. It used to be colonialism, but that was too expensive and too ugly and too in your face. They send in the British army, the French army, the Dutch army, the German army even. They send them in the Italian army, take over chunks of this continent and put their own people in and make sure that all this stuff flowed back to the mother country. And then after World War II, it became too prohibitive. Plus, people wanted democracy. And so that wasn't too cool. So they withdrew, and instead, it's a lot cheaper. Instead of having a whole army posted over there and a whole bureaucracy, let's just, pay off the head guy and his coterie. And that's what they do. And it's got nothing to do with a free market. It's all about stealing. I wish it was a free market. People in Africa get a break in other countries. I wish it was a free market, but it's not. And don't think that they steal it because they want to offer you cheaper goods. Yeah, they want to offer you cheaper goods, or they want to line their pockets. The reason you're getting all this cheap goods nowadays, you know why you're really getting all these cheap goods? Not only do they not want to pay you the labor to make them, but the cheaper the goods are that they can get you from China, the less they have to pay you, right? Did you ever think of it like that? You ever think of it like that? Walmart's the company store, okay? The more Walmartization that goes on in this country, the more subsidized goods that are brought in to sell to you, subsidized by cheap labor overseas, the less you have to get in your paycheck to buy what they tell you need. How many people ever thought of it like that? Give me a call. We got one more segment. 512-646-1984.
Increase in mental functioning.
If it keeps on raining, the levee's going to break. How much more can we take of this stuff, friends? Who voted for this stuff? Is this what we've been reduced to? Is this what who would vote for this? This country is unrecognizable to the one that I grew up in. Oh, yeah, we got a lot of flashy, fancy. It's got a nice, shiny package. Wrapper. Yeah, we got cell phones and we got all this other these toys. But they're nothing more than, the beads and trinkets that reportedly the Dutch gave to the Indians here to take Manhattan, okay? We're distracted with this stuff. Why are we all acting like we don't have a say? Why are we accepting this crazy notion that we don't have anything to say about it? Why aren't we demanding accountability? Why are we letting them play us against each other like gladiators to the death of us all? This is nuts. I'm telling you, friends, I'm on the radio. You are empowered, friends. You're empowered. They want you to feel disempowered. They want you to feel despair. They want you to stay home. They want to pat you on the head and say, oh, it's too complicated. Go play with your iPod. Or your iPad, or your Twitter, or whatever. Go tell people what you had for lunch. Yeah, hey, there you go. All your friends, all your thousands of friends who don't even know who you are and could really care as long as you be their friend, right? Come on. There's enough to go around. There's enough to make this world a beautiful place. But, I guess we just want to suffer. We want to suffer. Are you kidding me? Who was it? Alexis de Tocqueville, the French philosopher who came over here. Oh, beautiful things to say. Look up his quotes. I think this is one of his. He was amazed at how we Americans tolerated great amassing of wealth. I guess they didn't go for that so much in Europe to hide it. I don't mind people making a lot of money if you make it fair and square, right? My criteria is, what did you do to make the money? Who benefited while you were making it? And then, what did you do to get it? And then what did you do with it? I don't want you having a lot of money if you're going to cause trouble with it. No, you shouldn't have it. You don't deserve it. Not in my society. You don't. And not if I have a say about it. You know what? We got Richard's on the line. Okay, let's go to Richard. Hi, Richard. Is that you?
Yeah, I'll be real quick. Yeah, I just got to repeat what I've been saying. See, everything that Roger Stone and you guys talked about, at the end of the day, they got people in uniform that's willing to follow all the orders that they give them. So that's why we're at this point. I mean, what happened in Brussels, somebody provided those arms, those explosives. I mean, ISIS is full-blown now, and you still can't get any uprising in the military. They had the young man, Tim Kennedy, on. I guess he's a special forces guy, and he's an MMA guy. He's a real tough guy, and he's done a lot of good things. But he even said, everybody knows that ISIS is our guys, and we're providing them all the arms and ammo and everything else they need. But he just can't get anybody to do like he's doing and step out and come on shows like Alex Jones and people like Larry Nichols coming out and people like Roger Stone. If the people in the uniform don't do it, then I don't know how we're going to stop this, Tom.
Well, I got news for you. They already have a plan for that, too, because, Richard, someday the people in the military may get fed up, but there ain't going to be people in the military very much longer. No. They're making robotic soldiers right now, okay, that are going to hunt us humans down. Machines that have no heart, no mother, no nothing. And they're developing this stuff. Artificial intelligence is absolutely insane. Okay, so I got news for all those people in the military that aren't doing anything about it. Well, guess what? Pretty soon, it ain't going to make a difference because the robots that are going to replace you damn sure ain't going to do anything about it. And they ain't even going to think twice if you say, hey, wait a minute, please don't kill me.
That's right. So whenever we thank our military, ironically, we're thanking them for help killing themselves. But yet we keep thanking them. And I don't want to be known as the guy bashing our military. I did 8 years, you did your time. Yeah. So now bashing them. But if they don't start stepping up and standing down, I mean, how are we going to get out of this? Because they're the last line of defense. So and even Joe Skousen said, everybody that he knows at the top that knows what he knows, they're all just leaving. So if they just leave their post, I mean, hey, we're done for it. That's all I had to say, Tom.
Well, look, the good thing is, Richard, that nothing lasts forever. Right? No good thing lasts forever, but no bad thing lasts forever either. And I'm encouraged to see that at least, and I think the alternative media has a lot to do with this. People are waking up around the world. I've got people writing me, listening from all parts of, I get communications from Greece almost every day, multiple times a day. And people are fed up. People are waking up. And you know what's happening, Richard? People like you're finding stuff out. You're sharing it with people. I'm sharing stuff with people. People are sharing stuff with me, which I then reshare with all y'all. And it's like, it's not even that we're getting our news anymore from just outlets. We're getting condensed news. People that filter out all the bogus stuff and focus on the real deal stuff, and it starts passing it around to the same educated group of people. And I hope that's what's going to make the difference.
Well, you know what? Hey, if that's what's happening, I appreciate that. You're on the front line, so I know you're getting legitimate information. But I always bash the Christians. I've been leaving the Muslims out of this. What about the good Muslims, whatever? How come they haven't been hitting the streets? They're trying to protect themselves because they're here free. They finally got away from their homeland. But in the meantime, their religion has literally been gutterized. And even Farrakhan said that. So, I mean, we got to point fingers in every direction.
Well, they also are the object of an awful lot of subtle racism. I mean, we're supposed to be all really nice over here, but if you read the news, it's so stacked against them, story after story after story. And on the other side, it's written in favor of Israel as if they're selling Girl Scout cookies to the Palestinians. Why should they be complaining? So you've got all of that element as well. And I think Wahhabi Islam is just a phony baloney creation of oligarchs over there in order to keep people in line. I don't think I don't believe it's the real thing at all. And any religion has its crazy people that give it a bad name. And but what can I tell you?
I agree. But Tom, if you are really devout in your religion, should you be worried about what the press has to say, what your neighbor has to say? If you go into whatever the afterlife is, they shouldn't be buckling to that pressure.
I don't think Jesus Christ cared anything about what the press had to say about him. Not at all. Exactly. And you know what? He could have stopped the whole show. He's a person who could have stopped the whole show and said, hey, y'all, you know what? I recant. I disavow. I was just making it up. Don't kill me.
That's right.
He never did anything like that. No, because he was talking about the real deal. That's right. And, maybe I told you the story. I'll tell you again. The first time around when we were going to go invade Iraq the first time in Operation Desert Shield, right? I read a story about a Catholic priest somewhere who thought it was outrageous and we shouldn't be doing this, and he was trying to convince people, and he inspired me. In my hometown, I visited 2 or 3 churches, Catholic church, Protestant church and everything else. And I said, look what this priest is doing. Why don't we do something in our town to rise up against this war that's going to happen against these people? And I got blank stares from these ministers and priests and stuff. They didn't know what I was talking about. They were like, And one of them thought he was doing the good deal, So he got back to me and he sent me something in the mail. Look, Tom, we're going to do something about what you're talking about. You know what they were going to do? They were going to have a special prayer shield for our boys in Desert Shield. And it's like, no. What are you praying for? That they get to kill a lot of people without getting killed themselves? Come on. It's ridiculous. And that was back in 93.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. So we agree again. We can't keep letting people off the hook just because they're under pressure. I mean, as soon as you saw what happened to people that you know in building the North Tower, you jump right into the action. You had a career. Deborah could have been a millionaire by now, probably, as brilliant as she is with this lawyer thing. But she's still fighting the fight. So I'm not letting nobody off the hook, Tom. I'm sorry. Too many people have put too much on the line for us to be letting.
No, you're right on. These people, you know what it is? It's the money. It's the phony baloney. It's in not just politics, but it's in academia. It's in the churches. It's corrupted everybody and everything. And, who would Jesus bomb? All y'all preachers and ministers and priests. Who would Jesus bomb?
Well, they bombed all the churches in Egypt, all the churches in Syria, so I guess when they start bombing them all here, maybe the 501c3 prostitutes will come out of the dark, man. I guess.
No, it'll be too late because they'll bomb them here too. Because the people doing the people that own the bombers got their own little island somewhere, with robots pretty soon taking care of them. They don't need any of us anymore. That's what it is. It's divide and conquer. You bring all these Islamic people in, you dilute the culture in Europe, and you get them fighting against each other. How come? By the way, why aren't they shipping any of these refugees right next door to Israel? Israel's right next door to Syria. Why do they got to come all the way to Europe? How many are they taking in Israel? And why not?
No.
And why not? Don't tell me it's because they're racist. They're yelling at the Europeans, why don't you take them in? Don't be a racist. Take everybody. Well, Israel's right next door. How many are they taking in? But that's as usual. You got the last word tonight, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Call back soon. Be well. Drive safe. All right, good friends. That wraps up another week of INN World Report Radio. I've got some great guests lined up for you. Stay in touch. 512-646-1984. Of course, you can always call in, but you can give me an email to info@innradio.com. Talk with you next week.